and welcome to Literarily Wasted. My name is Talia.
I'm Christy.
I'm Lucas, and I'm fixing my mic because I'm wearing a scarf, but I'm here.
Hey, I'm Adam. I'm sitting behind the computer with all of my furry friends.
So weird.
It's like a furry convention back
Nope, and here we are. Nope. Back at Second and Charles for our first live discussion of the month. What month is it? It's November, and we are talking about the first half of Stephen King's The Eyes of the Dragon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. To get us started, Christy is going to give us a recap for all you people who read ahead and don't remember where you were supposed to stop. She's going to save you all now.
Which is right before chapter 55, up to chapter 55. So, where everybody is. King Roland is dead. He was poisoned with dragon sand. Peter has been...
Ooh.
Oh, Adam.
My phone was playing sound. Gotta see the comments.
Turn your phones off.
Peter has been tried and convicted for the king's murder because Flag, put a box, I guess his box from his childhood, in his secret place in his room, and it had dragon sand in it. Let's see.
Dum, dum, dum.
Yeah, so now he is at the top of the needle for the rest of his life. He just beat the crap out of Chief Warder Besson, and they're coming to an understanding. There seems to be some bribery that's about to take place so that he can get at least some decent food and maybe some furniture and stuff. Thomas has been crowned king, and he has commanded Flag to be his advisor. So that's pretty much where everybody is.
Or that's where we're all going to pretend to be as we have this discussion.
So if you kept reading, awesome.
But don't type. I was
keep it
going
to
to say
yourself.
keep your mouth closed, but keep your fingers closed.
Hold it until next time.
That was me holding it.
Yeah, no, that's appropriate.
Okay, to begin, we noticed in the group that, whether you like the book or not, let's all think about something that we do like about the book. We're trying something a little bit different. Pick a favorite thing or something you just thought was really cool. Maybe it's a particular character, a particular description. Throw it in the comments. We want to read it. We want to know what everybody liked the most about the first half of the book.
Yeah.
And while y'all are tippity typing, I'm going to think about what
We're going to go
like
first.
best. I was about, you are going to go
I'm
first.
gonna go
'cause
first.
I got to think about it.
Yeah. So I've read a lot of Stephen King, and I love Stephen King. This book is totally different than anything that I've read from him before, and I like having this classic fantasy story from Stephen King. And
Oh my God, I just remembered that you hadn't read this before. I'm so sorry.
this is my first time.
I was like, okay.
But I really love that he's writing a book for his daughter, so it's kind of on the young adult side, but he does add in some adult stuff. There's some stuff about sex, and there's stuff about murder and gruesome things.
An iron and a forge.
Yeah, and I love that he doesn't hold back, because young adults can handle it, and I think it makes for a much fuller book.
You're gonna learn sooner or later. You might as well learn from Stephen King and not your peers.
Yeah.
Nope.
So
That's not a great lesson. Okay.
anyways, I'm really enjoying that aspect.
So this is the first time I've read this since 7th grade, is when we had an English teacher assign it to us. Adam and I had the same English teacher, and she made us, this was assigned reading.
Shout out to Miss Norton.
Yup. She was an awesome English teacher. I forgot most of it, so this has been really a pleasant reread because it's still surprising me since I forgot most of it. But I'm also noticing a ton of things that went over my head as a 7th grader that I am now catching and fully comprehending. So that is fun. Honestly, I'm really thankful to have this read right now because I feel like I struggle bust so hard during Interview with a Vampire and just slogged through it. And the past couple of things that we've read were really heavy, and this is fun. This is easy. This is someone said it earlier, and it's true. It's very straightforward. You get what you're reading, and it's nice. It's a nice, enjoyable little break for me, and I really like it.
And not only do we have chapters back, thank goodness, we have some of the shortest chapters I've ever seen.
It's totally making, you could take all of the chapters from this and split it between this and Interview, and it still would have been a decent amount of chapters spread across both books. And it's great. It keeps the pace moving very, very well.
Yeah.
I am enjoying this book. Yeah, it's
What?
no, I thought it was really funny at the beginning. I was like, how comedic is this book gonna be? So, I don't know. Like he was inserting like little bits of humor, and maybe it's me and I'm sadistic and I shouldn't be laughing. Like, but the way that he wrote it came across as kind of intentionally funny, and it breathed hints of like Princess Bride and Stardust to me, which I like both of those. I actually like Stardust better.
Have you read it, or are you just talking about the movie?
Talking about the movies, I haven't read those. Come on.
We own
I've
the
watched
book.
them.
We own it. I'm sorry.
Probably.
Nope, go ahead.
Anyway, like the queen, this queen who had been in her reign for an eon and she died choking on a lemon. Like just stuff like that. Like I was like, I think that's supposed to be funny. So I laughed. So no, I think it's very straightforward, but yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. And then I did stop. I made it to our cutoff right up to chapter 55, and I had to hold myself back. I wanted to keep going, but I was like, no, I'm just gonna pause.
That's progress.
Yeah, so it's good. It's
You're a little book caterpillar.
I know. I know. Look, I know this is not typical Stephen King, but it is also my first Stephen King novel. I don't do scary, but I know what's the Dark Towers.
Yes.
Dark
Yeah,
Tower.
the Dark
Yeah.
Tower.
So that one's not scary, right?
I will be starting that after I finish.
There's
it.
Anyway,
some scary
This
aspects.
is my
Okay,
this
but
is
it's
my
not like
toe in
Gerald's
the
getting-
water
No.
for
it's not
Mr.
horror.
King. I will not be reading his scary stuff because I don't do scary. But no, it's a fun book. I think if I had to place it right now, and I know this is jumping ahead, I'd put it under Wool. So Wool right now is my pinnacle of all the books that we've read, and this is coming in second right now. I really like it.
Adam.
Adam.
Okay. What I like about this book, it is very simple, and I actually like that. I'm going to echo the sentiments that, we just got done with the interview with the vampire, and you struggle with that one hard. And this one is it's fun. I appreciate its simplicity, and it feels like somebody's telling me a fairy tale, which is nice. I like to be read to. So I like its simplicity. I like that it's very straightforward. It doesn't bog itself down with a lot of details. It just gets me to the story. It's all meat, no filler.
Yeah. So let's.
So, but I mean, yeah.
So what don't you like, Adam?
Well,
Well,
I was going to continue on with what I
Okay.
what I
No,
Okay,
let's
keep
focus.
going.
Let's
Okay.
focus on the positive because
Alright,
we're
you
getting
wanna go through
people's
some
comments
comments?
too.
Because,
yeah, let's look at some of the comments.
I think as far as like, what I liked about the book, this is my first and second Stephen King book because I've read it before in Miss Norton's class. Shout out to you, Miss Norton. I don't do scary books. So Stephen King, I appreciate that you wrote this for people like me and your daughter, who's
13 at the time.
Who's 13.
So are
or
you
was
saying you're a
when he wrote the
13-year-old
book.
girl?
But yeah, I appreciate that you did this, and I think it's cheeky in the right kind of ways. It's simplistic and it's kind of formulaic, but it's also like it also knows what it is, and I appreciate that. So yeah, that's me. Y'all, let's see what everybody else is saying. What do y'all like about the book?
Carrie White loves the chapter break.
Yes. chapter break.
So
Chapter breaks.
on YouTube, GiggleVids
What's up, Giggle
says,
Foods?
I also love some of the thoughtful things like you never outgrow your favorite toy even if you're presented with a better one. And Stephen King does kind of add a bunch of those little things, and I
Little
really
sentimental.
appreciated
Yeah.
those.
Well, and it also, like, even though this is a fairy tale, it made the story oddly relatable. Like, it made you want to relate to the characters, how, yes, this is set in a fairy tale setting, but, like, this is a normal human who, like, dealt with these really unfortunate circumstances in life, and it shaped him into who he was becoming, like, because he's just a person. He's not a bad person. He just had to deal with some stuff. Also, like, his conception was not good. Not good. Jay wants to know if you're wearing Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man. It's just ghosts.
I think this is technically Pac-Man, but my love is Mrs. Pac-Man. Or Miss Pac-Man. Excuse me.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was my game.
Philip says he thinks it's interesting how Stephen used the timeline, revealing what was going to happen, but not explaining it until he would go back to it.
Yeah.
That was very interesting because he'd be like, yes, this is what happened. And you'd be like, woo. But then the next chapter, he went back and he's like,
Well, yeah.
and this is how it did.
It felt like at the end of every chapter there was a little spoiler, and then he just never, he's just letting you know what's coming.
It was fun.
It's like he's a prolific writer or something.
Yeah.
Almost like he's like written more than a couple of books.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So Jess Welch says, I didn't expect this. Oh, nope, it's gone now.
Where'd it go? Where'd it go?
Said I didn't expect this from King, but I like it, and I keep waiting for the twist.
Yeah?
Yeah, I know, and I'll say that, Jess, like, I know it's coming, and while the story was a little derivative leading up, like, I still really enjoyed it because it's different enough and it's well written. But I'm too. I just like I don't know what happens next, and I did see some people saying that there was like very flat characters.
We're not there yet.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm still reading. So, Joe K. Joe K says, I read this so many times. Oh God, where'd it go? But I love Cut and Dry Flag. He's not a conflicted villain. He is evil. Yeah, it makes it really easy to like root against him. And that makes, honestly, the rest of the characters more interesting to me because it's not just like there's a good guy and a bad guy. There is definitely the bad guy. And there's the good, Peter's like a good kid, obviously. But it has you like, there's so much conflict in Thomas.
Yeah. Well, and mentioning Flag, like, I kind of love his backstory. He has lived for hundreds of years, and he just goes around, like, causing chaos and destruction, like, just by manipulating.
Yeah, a little gremlin.
I love that. I think that's
'cause
great.
When it got to all that stuff, I was like, what is this guy's end game? Because
Yeah.
he's just inserting himself into places of history, it kind of strategic moments, and it seems like it's more for his enjoyment
Oh, yeah.
than anything, to just kind of like throw the dice and you know, calculated, but and watch and see how it goes, just, you know, for giggles.
Let's make a footnote for later in the conversation because I haven't read a lot of Stephen King, but there's some people that have, and I think Flag might be
He
a
shows up
recurring
in
character.
several different things.
So let's talk about that later.
Yeah.
So
Come back to that.
Yeah.
Scott McClellan says, time hops continue. That is a good point. We have not yet broken.
We'll never get away from it.
we have not
I
yet
think.
broken this thread.
If we ever have to, yeah.
Jeff Moore says, you got to read King in school. We did. He said, I would have killed to do that. Literally killed. You can't tell people
Miss Norton was
that's
the coolest.
premeditated murder. Ashley, oh no, I don't know what she
See, I went to
replied
Catholic school, so I don't think we would have gotten through like chapter 4 of this one, but
Really not.
but it's okay.
What do you read in English class in a Catholic? The Bible?
I didn't read.
Do you read Latin? No. That explains so much. Oh my God. That's why you don't read.
It's probably. Yeah.
Because education's the devil. Okay.
What?
There is a joke here. Carrie White says this book popped my King cherry. Never read
Oh,
King before.
Carrie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it did for Sasha as well, right? I mean, that's the queen. Anyways, applicable. I appreciate the joke. Thanks. Dan loves the illustrations. You know what? I really enjoy that too. In the book, all the pencil sketching that was done in the book. Why are you making a weird face?
I'm listening to the audiobook, so I haven't seen any of them yet.
Aww.
Does anyone have their? Here, pass me a book.
Talia,
yeah,
I
here.
read the books
yeah.
and I
Here,
appreciate
look.
the little pictures too.
I love
They're
pictures.
so, like, I love it. It's
So it's
just
a graphic
real nice
novel.
little touch. And honestly, so I forgot.
Oh, there's the tower. Look at that.
There, oh my gosh. So I forgot, obviously, aspects of the plot and the story, but I remember these drawings because when I would flip the page and see it, it would flash back into my head and it was like, oh my gosh. I so vividly remember the image of him wearing that chainmail glove and crushing that spider into the goblet.
I remember that
Like,
too.
that was so vivid. And then when I saw the picture, I was like, oh my God, I'm a kid again. But
It's
I'm
a
not.
mean dragon.
Yeah, the
fine.
pictures took me back too when I was like, I did read this.
Yeah.
Oh, look. Oh, there's the sack race.
Oh my
Sack race?
gosh. Story time with Lucas.
For those of you that read the audiobook, you're really missing out on some
Yeah.
quality
But I will say,
photos,
okay, if
quality
you are
drawings.
in on that audiobook,
The narration's really
it's
good.
really solid narration. I think he does a really nice job diversifying the characters, and Flag's really creepy. Flag's really creepy.
Well, whenever he does Flag, he slows down, and then he like. Well, Lucas, you did a really good impression actually earlier,
He's like,
Do it.
yes, master.
and it's really low like that too. So you have to like pump up the volume a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's good.
That would drive me crazy if someone actually
there's
spoke to
the
me that way.
bats.
It'd be like, talk faster, please. Stop.
Has this ever been
I think-
made into a screenplay?
I think there's a note on the back actually talking, or there's a note somewhere in there talking about how the illustrations, yes, I did read it, so I know what that looks like. Sorry. About how the illustrations, the author, like all of these were done with like, just like pencil and paper. I read that
way
somewhere.
cool.
Kimberly. Hi, Kimberly. She says, I've never been able to make it through a King book before, so I was nervous, but this is really enjoyable. See, I did it backwards. So in 7th grade, read this, loved it, and was like, yes, awesome. Because when I read a book and I get really excited about it, I then want to read everything else by that author. But when you're in middle school, you shouldn't do that, because what happened was I read this and was like, yes, Stephen King. Went to the library, got a bunch of Stephen King books, started reading them, and was like, oh, God, and like had to take them back to the library. Yes, so you shouldn't read like Gerald's Game when you're like in 8th grade. It was terrifying.
Well,
Anyways,
And Dan Laverty says he read it in the 7th grade and he really liked it. But he says the magic isn't as intense for him anymore. And that speaks to Stephen King's success in reaching the target audience. And yeah, he wrote this with a very specific audience in mind, and I thought he was really successful in that.
So that's why it's resonating with me so well.
Aw.
What is that? Oh,
Everyone's like,
7th grade, Lucas. Those
We
are
wanna-
very nice pictures.
We want to move on to the negative portion.
Yeah.
I'm still reading positives.
Well, we can go back. Let's.
People rereading. Everyone loved it. Scrolling through really fast. Everyone reading it. Carrie loved the God versus dog mentality. Oh, yes.
I did like that. Yeah, I like
Love
that
that queen. He did such a good job of making you fall in love with her as the queen, like so
Yeah.
fast.
very quickly.
Because she's just good. Oh, the napkin. Always use a napkin.
And she's not, I mean, she doesn't have much time in the book, but the time that she does have is used really, really well.
A very, very strong impact. Okay, I'm going to keep reading. Something that you didn't like.
So this I feel like we're gonna get more discussion here, because there were some pretty vocal people in the Facebook group. If you're not in the Facebook group, you should join it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were some pretty vocal discussions. It wasn't everybody's thing. So yeah, this is your time to talk about why. So let's start with Christy.
I think it's also a lot easier to talk about the stuff that you don't like, because it's
Just
just
don't type in all caps.
a really easy thing to discuss. What did I not like?
Yeah, she loved everything.
Oh, wait. Well, okay. How can Thomas still be a good kid when he killed the dog?
I'm going to quit reading for a second because I'm not going to be able to focus. Okay. That part is very difficult to read, obviously, because yes, your heart breaks and there is a moment, like it's true, like it's painful to read because he's obviously going through something horrific, but also he has stoned an animal to death, which is,
Deliberately, like,
yes, which is horrific. What I tried to focus on is the reminder that he is still very much a child. He is a child who has never had a mother, who is constantly reminded of that fact by the way people look at him and the way people treat him, the way people treat his brother. He has a father who, like, even at this young age, he can tell that his father does not love him like he loves his brother.
yeah.
He's hurting so much. And then Stephen King so beautifully writes it in, like, please remember,
Yeah.
this is a child who is suffering and hurting. And yes, he has done a bad thing, but that doesn't mean he's a bad, like, good people can do bad things. I'm not saying he's inherently good, but like, it's such a point of conflict because you want to hate anyone who would do that. but he's a broken little kid.
Yeah. Well, and he does get over and over again, you know, he gets his heart broken, I think, by his dad and his brother, who he just wants to love him. But his brother also gives him so many chances to like join in on the goodness and be a part of everything, and he for some reason won't join in. And I'm waiting for his redemption. I can't wait for it. Like, I feel like, you know, it's hinting at it there at the end of the, right where we got to the stopping place. He's remembering the poison, like he's remembering what he saw through the dragon's eyes.
And I think we have to remember too that so this kid became king at age 12. So these little glimpses that we've seen are even younger. So he's a little kid. Like, that's heavy. Also, I just remembered something that I didn't like, and it's dumb. But speaking of the glove and squeezing the spider, I love that part because it's so vivid. And then I get so annoyed that he just like pours it out. And I'm like, this is like a great, cool little thing. Oh, this spider, like he has to wear a special glove. His hand was throbbing because it was so poisonous.
Well, and also he'd been caring for it for
Yes.
years,
And then he
probably
freaking wasted
decades.
it.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate waste, so I didn't like that. I don't like it that he just dumped it out. Like, poison someone with it. Like, I don't know. It was wasteful.
Lucas, what did you not like about the book?
I was a little annoyed at like the whole trial setup because it's like, okay, they're that quick to turn on Peter, who is obviously shown that he is
His whole life.
good
yeah.
and just and compassionate, and just because like
He cried.
and there was this obvious plant, so it's like you're gonna assume that just because this is in his room, that he poisoned the king, when obviously if it's the world's deadliest poison and you have this really sinister kind of creepo magician guy that knows everything about this, like you're just gonna take his word that like, oh, I misplaced
No.
it. You know, like
It's true, though. Of course he would cry. He's exhausted and he's upset.
So I found that to
I
be
cry all the time.
like, I get it, and I know he had to get the story to a point, but I was like, really, you're not going to suspect Flag at all? But maybe that just shows. But I don't know.
Well,
I was a little frustrated by that.
There was also distrust for Flag already by like a lot of the people that like work for the king, I think.
Yeah.
And Flag just said that like his stock got stolen, or I guess it was disappeared. I don't know.
I don't know. I found that was a little frustrating because I was just like, really, that easily? But I'm sure it'll make up for it in the end. So.
Vicky says, sorry, I'll bounce back to you, Adam, in a second. I just like Vicky said, King wrote this for his daughter, but the only major female character so far is already dead. That is really
interesting.
Good point. Maybe it's just to show how like foolish men are. Nope.
That's a sweeping generalization.
But is it wrong?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it is wrong. Okay, so what did I hate about the book? What did I not like? I don't agree with Lucas. Getting to the trial section, it felt like we're making progress and then we're going to backtrack it. Make progress and then we're going to backtrack.
They did backtrack
Make
a
progress,
lot.
Backtrack. And that to me, you know, seeing as how the book is so simply told, and then like taking a big section of the story and retreading over, like, you know, first you give me like a very general like spoiler. You just basically tell me what happens in 2 sentences, and then you unpack those 2 sentences for like 20 chapters. Was a little frustrating for me because I think I agree with a lot of people in the comments that are saying the first half of the book was just set up. I think somebody said that in the comments, and that, like, you know, now it feels like, and I feel like we've said this before in Literarily Wasted, but like you get to the middle point and you're like, now I feel like the story is actually starting. Like now Peter is like, so the first half of the story is basically Flag's plan to frame Peter. And that happens, and now we finally have the protagonist who's making an active decision to, like, you know, once he's been put in a very precarious situation, now he's coming up with this plan. And we stopped right before we hear what that plan is. So, and I having read the book, I don't remember what it is, so I'm interested to find out. But that, I think, Lucas, you were talking about like that, getting to that point, you're like, I want to read more, which is a good thing. But the fact that you took so much time to like unpack the trial, and then while it was interesting going into the world of the butler and his son, you know, I think like that sort of detachment took me away from the book. Another thing, you know, people are saying that the characters are boring, and to an extent, I can agree with that because the good guy's really good, the bad guy's really bad. You know, Thomas is a gray. Is that we're talking about Thomas, and I think Thomas is a gray area, which I would like to see. You know, like Christy said, let's see where that goes.
Yeah.
But you know, it doesn't seem like, you know, Flag is a bad guy. Peter's a good guy. Roland is dead.
Spoiler alert.
Roland's dead. Not a spoiler.
That's how we started the
Good
stream.
riddance. But you know, they fall into sort of archetypes, and Flag being like bad for badness sake. Like we don't know what his deal is, and like even Stephen King's narration is like, Flag is just a man. He's basically like the Joker in The Dark Knight. Some men just want to see the world burn. That's Flag, for better or for worse. I like Flag. I think he's an interesting character, but he's a mustache twirler, bad guy.
Speaking of Flag, Dan says it bugs me that he's always having to hide his smiles. He's powerful and magical and lives his whole life being deceptive, and he can't keep himself from smiling? That's a good point.
Well, and doesn't he have to hide his face? Doesn't his face look like not human?
Okay, but why does his face keep changing though? Right? Because sometimes he's not wearing the hooded cloak, and then that one time where he grabbed the lady and they said that his eye sockets were just big black holes, and then there was one day where he looked normal, and then sometimes he looks a certain age. So what is influencing his appearance? Is it like a conscious choice that he makes, or is it like
It's a potion.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes he's a skull, and sometimes he's just creepy.
He's a magic man. Oh, I also didn't buy the fact, like Lucas said, I didn't buy it when like Flag is clearly, he's a bad guy. Like, look at him. Nobody likes him. He's a bad guy. Why wouldn't you think that, like, you know, he's like, oh yes, this is what the poison's called. It's called dragon sand, and I had some.
Bring
up
me
until
obsidian. I know
lost
exactly what it does. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Stephen
he's
writes
like-
about that. He says that people
you're on a first name
inherently.
basis?
Yes, Steve.
He prefers Mr. King.
Steve and I
Oh gosh.
were talking. Ew, I'm gross. He writes about that, about how people are inherently like suspicious, especially when it comes to royalty, and they wanted that he was easy for him to plant the seed because they wanted to believe.
I don't buy
This-
it. I still don't buy it.
Well, I'm
Flag
just
is
saying he wrote it in there.
Flag is a bad guy, and
And then
Peter
he
is like
texted me about
super
it.
good.
We're friends.
And so, like, surely nobody was like, maybe Flag did this. They were just like, kill him.
Yeah. Well, and you can see on your screen, Jess says, I can't deal with Thomas and his woe is me attitude towards his life. Yeah, I understand his life isn't that great, but he never found something to make him happy. He just dwelled in his hate. But I think Flag
also-
has been nurturing that for his entire life.
Flag's the only one that pays attention to him.
Yeah.
Can you imagine living a life where the only person who pays attention to you is Flag? Like, yikes. So that's awful. And he's 12. He's like barely in the beginning stages of puberty. He is a mess of a child, and it was about to get worse. I don't know that in the book per se. I just know that age. It's not great.
Well, he did just become king and he didn't want to, so.
Yeah, he said he was going to kill himself. He would rather die than become king. And he's really, really scared of bats. That felt like a random.
That was kind of random.
Yeah.
But also, he knows that Flag killed his father, and is still like, help me.
Let's talk about that for a second. He saw Flag bring his dad a second cup of wine when he doesn't usually get one, and then 3 days later, his dad drops dead.
Yes.
Right? It was like days later.
Yes.
So he saw something suspicious, and his brain is starting to piece something together, but I really don't think he knows yet.
I think he does, like, deep down, it's like something that they talk about all these, like, chests of secrets that you splash down and bury in the well.
Yeah.
I think he suspects, but he doesn't really have proof. And then he's like, I'm a dumb kid. No one likes me. Who'd believe him? Ugh.
Yep.
Like, that's not what he sounds like. But
Well, also, it wasn't instant. It was days later.
yeah,
So I really...
it's just a suspicion.
And they've already hinted that, like, that's about to come back. They hinted at the very beginning that, like, that was Flag's one big mistake, was showing him that the secret behind the dragon's eyes.
The eyes of the dragon. Say it. Say the title of the book. Say it.
Okay, we had some people on YouTube talking about the booger eating.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He'd roll it around.
That was totally
roll it around,
unnecessary.
play with it.
Okay, but here's my thing. Yes. Was it unnecessary? Yes. Was it gross? Yes. However, did it immediately make you see, oh, Thomas, who has viewed his father as this king who's untouchable? Can you imagine this kid watching his father do this and immediately be like, this? Like, and that's what you're supposed to see, right? You're like, what? Be like, this is the man that I was idolizing. This is the man that I've been like begging for him to love me. Like
Peeing in the fire and like throwing his glass in and be like,
talking to his own farts and dead animals. No. Yeah, it immediately makes you feel contempt for this character. So while it was incredibly descriptive, a little bit too much so, it did its job of making me be like, a king is not, he's just a gross dude like anybody else.
rolling those boogs, man.
Yuck. Stop.
Like a fine
Okay.
fine connoisseur.
That is like an emerald. Admiring it
Just
from the firelight.
holding it in the firelight and maybe eating it, maybe just putting it under my favorite chair here for later.
So Linda said that Thomas said he won't say anything because he's afraid Flag will kill him. So I don't remember that part, but
now that does seem familiar, but it's true. He's still a kid.
and I feel like Flag would definitely just kill him.
Yeah. I mean, Flag said, you were right. Like, anytime he was keeping an eye on Thomas through his entire childhood, and anytime he was feeling down, he would just pop up and be like, hi, are you feeling down? Let's go somewhere, just the two of us, while I scare you.
And I don't like how he calls him Tommy, like especially in the audiobook, because it's you definitely just get the cringes that it's
Don't
like.
forget that Flag is going to kill everybody. Like, didn't he say that? Isn't that like a
Yes.
part of it, that he was like, you're all gonna die in like a horrible flame?
Oh,
or
he
something?
said
Like,
he was going to come back later when Tommy Boy's head, that's a different thing, when Tommy's head is covered in
Yeah.
flies and on a spike. Which
Yeah,
is,
so he's expecting everybody to be dead because of what he's doing. He is the master of chaos.
Well, I think he
perfect,
also
no.
expects that of anywhere he goes and anything he touches. So Carrie White says, I didn't understand how no one thought that if this dragon sand was so dangerous, then how did Peter know exactly how to handle it? And that's a great question. How old is Peter? He's like 15?
17.
17?
16, 17.
Yeah, there's no way.
Oh, he has short fiction. Jeff says if you don't like King's novels, you can try his short fiction.
Yeah.
Jeff, go in the group later, not now, after, and give us some recommendations.
That's not scary.
Yes, not scary, please, if that exists.
Oh, let's talk about it, because Vicky brought up Thomas's fever. She said, I actually wondered if Thomas's fever was psychosomatic, which means all in his head.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, probably.
That's what I assumed, because like, what else would have made him sick? I mean, maybe the
It was
plague,
the dark
because
time. Yeah.
this was a long time ago in a castle, and I imagine there wasn't like a lot of soap. God, they didn't even use napkins.
Well,
I did like
Some
the
of them.
description of how everyone would just be like feasting, and then they'd just be like, "Bleh," and then they just keep like feasting, and then like the one king made the guy like lick it up.
don't
and he was
repeat
like,
that.
he was
No.
like, he like threw up into his plate,
Okay.
and then he was like, "Now lick your soup."
I did hate that. I had blocked that out, so thanks.
It's just it just paints this awful graphic, like these people are crude,
Yeah.
and this is, you know, and I think that's what makes Sasha
And
so much
Peter.
more a breath of fresh air, that like she's actually trying to teach this young boy a level of courtesy and manners and compassion that he's obviously never going to get in this
Yeah.
this society of feasting and booger picking.
Ew, gross. Don't like it.
And the way Sasha died, I thought was kind of interesting. Just that, like, it was hidden as, like, from childbirth that she died, but it was actually the midwife.
Who slit her, right?
Ah, don't
Yeah, I'm
Don't
that's
like it.
What happened?
That also made me really sad. And also, like, I wanted to be understanding because this woman was saving her son. But also, I don't like her. I don't even remember her name.
The midwife?
Yeah.
I think she did it because she knew that what Flag gave her, he could easily take away.
Yeah.
And she also owed him. She said she would give him anything, which isn't an excuse, but I think her son, and Sasha would have all died anyways if she hadn't done it.
all agree that she was not a good midwife.
Yeah. Going back to Thomas being sick, though, Mike says, I assume Flag made Thomas get sick to keep him out of the way during the trial. Which, yeah, I could see. Thomas is going to be the new king, and while he resented his big brother, like, there's no telling what he would have done.
Yeah, Carrie says the same thing. I always thought that his fever was a side effect of Flag, even if Flag didn't know it. So if Flag, there's probably something. You know, Flag's got his hands in everything.
Yeah.
He's a little sneaky guy.
Yeah. Well, and Thomas's reaction after the trial when he becomes king, like, he's hoping his brother is looking down from the needle, like, watching and, like, getting everything that he's supposed to get. Like, even once everything was stripped away from his brother, he's still hoping, like, to rub it in. But they have such a hard relationship.
I have to keep reminding myself that he's 12. He's 12. That doesn't make it any better, but he is most definitely a child.
Yeah. Well, Dan Lafferty says, one part that intrigues me is when Flag points out to Roland how hard Thomas worked on the boat. Was he actually having a moment of goodness and trying to open Roland's eyes to his son? The whole boat thing was heartbreaking.
It was, but it was intentional. I thought so. He baited him because I think he knew that he knew Roland really, really well. I think he knew that he was going to make an honest comment on the craftsmanship or the appearance. And remember, it said there was like a trick of,
The echo or whatever.
yeah, so that it was intentional so that Thomas would hear his own father insulting what he had worked so hard on.
Well, Flag manipulated Roland his entire life, just like he was manipulating Thomas, and they even there's
He
a lot
says
of
they're the
similarities,
same.
between
Yeah.
the two, from their physicality and everything, that it was. I think in that one part, it was like, he could see that his blonde hair was going to start falling out.
He
and
could see
then
the man
his
he's going to become.
Yeah, his bow legs, and then you have Peter, who's this, was raised by Sasha, and so he's a threat to Flag because he didn't have as much influence on him.
Well, I think Flag doing it on purpose to kind of bait Roland into saying something mean makes so much more sense than him actually being nice, because he doesn't strike me as someone who would ever do that.
Right.
But unless it was for his own gain. But I thought Roland's relationship with Thomas was heartbreaking too. Like, if he didn't take after Roland so much, I wonder if their relationship would have been much better.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that the son that he didn't love as much was the son that was just like him.
Well, and there's probably also some, like, blame for Thomas killing his mom. Which,
Sorry, I just had a mental connection. Please keep going.
which he didn't kill her, but it was passed off as like a accident of childbirth.
Yeah.
I think Thomas blames himself. Right?
Yeah.
Like I think
I
because he
think he
mentioned that
does.
because
I think there are a lot of people
I think
who
the
blame
whole
him.
kingdom blames him.
Because everyone loved Sasha. And I was just realizing when I was saying Roland didn't love Thomas, who was just like himself. Well, Roland obviously didn't love himself. That whole thing when he was, remember that night where he was crazy drunk and he was
like
screaming at the dragon?
Throwing his cloak
Yeah.
open and naked.
And he was like, look at me. He was like, look at what I've become. Like, he hates himself. So he doesn't love his. Oh, no, I'm so sad. Can we talk about something? Jeff says, does anyone see parallels between Rasputin and Flag? I definitely see it in this book.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I actually call him Rasputin sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Small world. We just bought my daughter a fish and named him Rasputin.
Oh.
Why?
A fish?
Yeah, well, we call him Poot for short.
Poot?
Poot. Well, she has had a bad streak. The past few fish have died, and I said maybe if you name him Rasputin, he'll have a harder time dying.
Oh.
If all the fish died, maybe she should be named Rasputin.
Let us know how
fair.
that goes.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch. We just got him this
Can you
week.
start naming your plants?
Oh.
Can you? What is that little rainbow when you bring up like the little rainbow scream and it's like? This interruption brought to you by the fact that Talia just threw a Diet Dr. Pepper at her husband's head. You name your plants.
I don't have any plants.
I know. I have to keep them all alive, all by myself. It's fine. What are we talking about?
Sorry. Squirrel.
We're talking
Rachel
about
says-
Eyes of the Dragon.
Rachel says I didn't enjoy the yelling parts while listening to the audiobook. I'm so sorry then that you have to listen to me intermittently yell as well. Well, now I kind of want to hear the audiobook.
Yeah,
The audiobook's solid.
Yeah,
And it's
he
the
acts
guy-
way more in it than normal audiobooks, I think.
It's the guy from, what's it, Perfect Strangers?
Yeah,
Is that what?
Bronson Pinchot.
It's
Something
Balky?
Bronson
Balky.
Yeah.
Balky?
It's Balky.
Don't be ridiculous.
No, he's fantastic. And like I will say, his characterizations for everybody, like when like that scene with Roland where he's throwing his cloak open and he's obviously totally inebriated and throwing his glass and screaming at all the heads on the wall is really powerful. And like his depiction of Flag, like everyone is. It's a really cool. I would have never guessed that this guy does audiobooks, but it's good.
The throwing the glass thing reminded me how stinking calculated is Flag. Every single little thing that he has done, so much as even to the toast with the poisoned wine, when he made the gesture, knowing that Roland would mimic him, of making the toast and then throwing the glass into the fireplace, getting rid of the evidence, knowing that Roland would mimic him, like, he is smart bad guy.
What I like about Flag is it's like any really, really good story and a bad guy that plays the long game. Like this guy has probably planned this stuff out well in advance, and he is playing such a long game because obviously he's like 8,000 years old, but like, and I feel like he revels in playing the long game too. Like he likes all the little things coming into place along the way. Yeah, yeah. So I do like that. Like as evil and sinister as it is, it's fun to watch that kind of happen.
Yeah. And someone mentioned that one of the reasons he's always keeping his cloak up is so people don't see that he doesn't age, which makes sense.
Tamara on YouTube says, I think Roland saw Sasha and Peter. Yes, so that's a good point. He did. He loved Sasha, and so Peter was his connection to her, like regardless of however their relationship romantically was, he did really love her. Dan says it was odd that no one else came to Thomas to tell him he was king and try to become his advisor or right-hand man. This kid is the king, and the only person who bothers to tell him is Flag. That's a good point. The only thing that I could think of is that maybe, well, first off, it's not like everyone has access to him, but of the people who do, maybe they're just like still so torn over Peter and that situation, or they're hoping like that Peter would still be king, or I don't have an answer. These are just guesses. Like, I don't know. Linda says, does that foreshadow that Thomas isn't worth anyone else's time, even as king? That's true. Didn't they say like almost immediately, like in the beginning of his reign, people were like, well, like they're not actually like cheering for him. They're cheering that their lives can go back to normal. They're like, okay, fine, we have a king now. Let's keep going. And that, that people knew immediately that he was going to be mediocre at best, just kind of like Roland was. The only time Roland was actually a good king was when he was listening to Sasha. I lost my choo-choo train of thought.
I thought that was interesting about Roland, just like starting the book with that kind of king. Like,
He was
this
good.
guy is forgettable. He is not going to go down in history as doing anything good, and he's not going to go down in history as doing anything bad. He's like that guy. He's like that president you can't remember his name.
I kind of love that
Like
because
somewhere in the
you
middle.
never get that in like kingdom stories.
See, I don't know this because I don't read a lot. So, like, What kind of kings do you get in like normal fantasy stories?
Well, usually if there's a story about them, there's
They're either
something
good or they're bad.
really good or really bad.
So they're all like basically either Peter or Flag.
Not that bad.
Good
They're not
committal
boring.
answer there.
I feel like they're.
And Matt. Thomas
Thomas
is
is-
the rebound
Aw.
king. Wah, wah.
Really is. I mean, like Thomas seems like he's like the rebound kid.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
He's the third king within a week. So yeah, like things aren't going great. That's not what people expected. Also, he's a child. Sorry. I can't
Yeah.
imagine. That just sounds terrible to me. Scott McClellan, thank you. He said Charlie the Choo Choo. Is that the name of my thought that I
thought
lost?
it was a Stephen King reference.
Oh, is it? Oh no.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Is it scary? I don't want to know.
okay, so I have a
No.
question. So because I don't read a lot, this is for everybody in the comment section as well. Because I don't read a lot of fantasy, we've talked about this book as being very simple. Words like derivative, formulaic are used. How does this compare to other fantasy novels that you've read? And if you like it, why? Or if you don't like it, like, are those the reasons? Like, because you're just so well read in fantasy that like this is just too simple?
But is it fair to put it in the category of normal fantasy novels? This is a young adult book. So I think it should be categorized as such. Like,
Well, I mean, it's a fantasy genre still. I think you can pare it down, but like young adult, sure. I would look at it still as like fantasy.
I mean, it is for sure. No, I agree. I wouldn't put this up against some top-notch fantasy
Robert
stuff
Jordan
that was,
stuff.
yeah, that was written specifically geared towards.
Yeah, but I also don't
adults.
want to make excuses. I mean, we're all reading it, right? We're not young.
Hey,
So
Well,
Young at
young adult
heart.
isn't just for young adults
no,
either. And
it's nice.
and he does put some adult themes in it, which I really appreciate, like I said earlier. But I think the biggest difference to me is that in most of the other fantasy that I read, there's so much more descriptions of everything. There's also like a lot more plot lines. There's multiple things happening at once. And you kind of get that here, but it's just been simplified, I think.
This is a lot less political, and I don't necessarily mean
Yeah.
that in like a government way, but there's not like all of these underlying things that you have to kind of like wade through or try and figure out the mystery of. He really does just put it all out there so you can enjoy the story. Like, you don't really have to dig for anything.
Yeah. So Matt Scalisi said, I've been reading some more fantasy the last couple of years. This is very different. The tone is much lighter and the pace is quicker. The plot is structured more like a bank heist story than an epic fantasy.
Yeah, and Jeff said put it in the same group as The Hobbit and Chronicles of Narnia, which I can see that.
Yeah, there's not like 3 whole chapters just describing
But I mean,
mountain
this
range,
story-
which
so-
I can do without.
So, for the King readers, like, this is just one complete story. There's no, like, shared universes or anything else, or ish.
Well, and Dan has a really good point. He said most fantasy novels aren't written to be fairy tales. This is more like a fairy tale than a typical fantasy novel. And it is straight up a fairy tale. We are being told this story by a historian of like this world.
Like a third-party narrator.
Yeah.
Even references historian, like a historian.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have compared this, Lucas, you did too, to The Princess Bride. And it definitely has that feel. And like the narrator is talking to us, he's giving us the clues for what's coming later, and that's more from him and not just from like Stephen King, in my opinion.
He's like, yeah, this is a story, but this is my opinion about the story.
Yeah.
Or remember this while I'm telling you the rest of the story.
Yeah, so Leanne says she puts it in a similar category as Princess Bride. I imagine him telling the story to his children.
okay, so then let's reframe it. Let's look at it as like a fairy tale for young adults and for us. You know, we're reading it. We're going to continue to read it. Let's address the criticisms of flat characters, derivative plot and story. Because let's talking about the plot itself. Like, good boy to be king, framed by evil magician, imprisoned, trying to right the wrong, basically. Like, you know, is people who read a lot of stories, because I don't, again. how would you address? What are your thoughts on like, is this derivative? Are the characters too flat? Is it too simple? I personally, I like it. You know, I like the fact that it's kind of sing-songy and then it's whimsical and then it's cheeky. But I get it. You know, I feel like it could give me just a little bit more complexity with the characters. What do y'all think?
I don't think the characters or the plot or the story are too simple. I think they're just told in a very simple way. And I think that there's a big difference there.
I agree. And even on that vein, like, I'm not a critic, like a credentialed one anyways. And sometimes you just want a cheeseburger book.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's nice. It's a really nice break to just enjoy the story. And it's kind of like watching reality TV. It's just easy.
Philip said, I think Fred Savage would have more to say about this being, is this a kissing book with the beginning part about conception?
I think there's a
yes,
distinct
that's
lack
good.
of all of that in
They
that
didn't
relationship.
kiss. Sorry. Anyways.
But no, I think while it's familiar, it's different, right? So I mean, but I think the familiarity is what's kind of pulls you through to want to figure out what's different about it. But I think the characters they're pretty multifaceted. Flag's a little bit derivative if you had to just be like, okay, stereotypical bad guy in a cloak that knows way too much about horrible potions and stuff. Okay, but
That makes me more excited
To see what
read
happens.
about any influence he has later in the other Stephen King books to see is that how he is always read, or is it just specific? Okay, well, never mind then, because Scott McClellan just went. Well,
oh,
and
so
to-
he played. So he's
he's in the
other
Dark
books?
Tower.
He's in the Dark Tower, and he's the antagonist of The Stand.
I'm not going to read that one, but
Oh, it's so
Are those
good.
scary?
is it scary?
The Stand? Oh, yeah.
Okay, never mind. But also, I just realized, I was like, while I was talking
Oh, but
about,
I
I'm
don't know,
not a
like-
book critic. I'm drinking barefoot wine out of a tiny plastic bottle. So obviously, I like junk food
Hey, you're
books.
classy, girl.
Well, and to go back, Justin says there really is a lot of complexity behind the simplicity. And yeah, I love that.
I really love the way that you put it. It's not necessarily that they're simple characters. It's just a story told simply.
Yeah.
Put it on a shirt.
So here's
on
a
a
question
book
I
line.
have for people that are in the comment section that like, this is not my cup of tea. You know, we had some pretty vocal people in the discussion group. Is talking about this helping? Is talking about it making you want to like read more? Because I found that happen to me several times with books that I didn't like when we had a halfway point. Maybe if we had a halfway point with Interview with the Vampire, I would have been like, all right, I'm in.
I don't
really-
think that would have helped.
Is
That's
talking
really
about
true.
it is talking about it helping you appreciate it more? Because I mean, I think we all like it to the extent that we're not turned off by it. We have some nitpicky issues with it, but I don't think we're on that side of the fence. So for those of you that are, how is this discussion helping you? That'd be
That's a
interesting.
really good point. I don't remember which book it was, but there was one in particular that we read, and I almost want to say it was it Vicious? I think it might have been Vicious and Night Circus, where I was really, meh about both when we got to the midway point, and didn't really strongly dislike it, but also kind of didn't care. And then after our midpoint discussions and hearing everybody's opinions and like digging into it, it made me that much more excited to finish the book. So, I mean, honestly, just on that point, I'm really grateful for this group, because I probably would have, I wouldn't have quit reading because I don't know how to do that. But it did make it easier to finish some of the books that we've done thus far.
Yeah, I remember really hating Good Omens of the first discussion, but then having talked about it, I was like, okay, y'all have changed my mind. I can get on with this. So, you know, and even talking about this book is helping me to appreciate some of the complexities that I didn't appreciate beforehand. Because again, I beeline through it, and the book makes it easy to do so. But yeah, talking about books is eye-opening, right?
It's awesome, right?
So, two very different opinions. Justin says, I found myself not reading to follow the story, but to find each nugget of insight into human nature that King flashes every now and then within the story. And then on an opposite branch, Vicky says, I would have to say no on this book, to be honest. I feel like a lot of the people who are appreciating it are more King fans in general. So I feel like that's super interesting because I don't want to read anything else that he has done. Not just because I don't like scary stuff, but because I did make the mistake. It was a mistake for me, not other people, to read a couple of his other books after this. And I was very unhappy with that decision, and there was a period of time where I slept with the lights on.
Well, that's why you need this group to help curate your experience through Stephen King, right?
So I think I don't know. It's like a total toss-up. I always think it's really interesting seeing y'all talking in the group about which books. There's some of you who are really vocal about which ones you loved, and then you immediately hate the next one. And I think that's
that's the
so
point of-
cool.
yeah.
Like, that's the point. Like, God, how boring would it be if we all felt exactly the same? We'd have nothing to talk about. But I don't. Matt wants to know, which King books did you read? I read Gerald's Game in middle school, which was a mistake. I didn't know. I didn't know.
You're like,
okay.
I like games.
I
Gerald
don't
sounds like a
know.
nice
like,
man.
I wasn't allowed to do fun things as a child. I was just dropped off at the library. And I was like, okay, book. Sit down on the floor, open. Oh, God. It was terrible. There was another one that I really don't remember. I think my brain actually did like lock that one up in a tiny box and bury it. I know for a fact there was another one. And I can't remember much about it. And I think that's for the best.
I think I should do summaries of Stephen King books based on their titles alone.
Oh.
Because I have no idea. Gerald's Game's probably about a chess player named Gerald.
That's exactly what it's
Place where you
about.
bury your pets.
Is that the one that had like the dog in it?
Yeah.
That's Cujo.
No. There's another different dog.
I don't know.
Does Stephen King have a thing against dogs?
Hey.
Stephen King, do you hate dogs?
We should tweet at him.
Taking it back to Eyes of the Dragon, you
Yes.
know, like Vicky's point, I think she also said in comments about, like, I feel like this is, the people that appreciate this books are for people who are fans of Stephen King, but we have some divisiveness in the comment section there too, because this is not traditional Stephen King. I think there are people like Jeff who, if you like Stephen King, you like Stephen King and not this little thing that he tried to do over here for his daughter. I've never read Stephen King, so other Stephen King. So like this is all I know, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you should stay just with this one. You too.
Okay.
Well, you can maybe try the Dark Tower.
Not the Dark Tower.
I feel like I can handle that. Okay, so on that note, any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
I'm excited. I'm excited to finish.
I'm excited
Yeah.
to finish the
Yeah,
book.
me too.
And, oh no, where is it?
What do you
And speaking of, hold on, that's not it. Hold on, found it. I'm sure if any of you saw the poll, you know who won. In December, we are going to be reading our first graphic novel. Whee! And it is graphic. So, keep that in mind. Hope you're all adults. I'm not in charge of that, but, you know. The Umbrella Academy Apocalypse Suite. You can grab it at Second and Charles. And
Sweet.
for 20% off, just tell them you're in our book club. And we're really excited. And also, just a reminder, since December is crazy banana pants busy for everybody, we have decided, since this is a graphic novel, we're just doing one live discussion on December 18th. Still a Wednesday, middle of the month. We're going to talk about the whole ding dang thing. Other reminders, now that the wine's kicking in, we will be talking about the end of Eyes of the Dragon, and then anything that we missed, wrap it all up in one big discussion on Wednesday, November 27th.
It's the day before Thanksgiving.
Yes, it is. So if you're already like stuck visiting family and like eating dry turkey, just pull up your phone and chime in. You're welcome. You got a scapegoat. Come talk to us about the book. Same time, same place, on your phone, on a couch. What else? Thank you to Second and Charles, as always, for giving us awesome discounts on the things. Since next discussion is the end of the month, we'll also have a super cool giveaway. Thanks to Second and Charles, so you'll want to join in. It's pretty cool. We picked out all the stuff tonight. And make sure that you're following us on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, and join the Facebook group, The Literarily Wasted Lounge, where we talk about all of the things all of the time. It never stops, never ever. We're always there, and we're always talking.
And also, if you know anybody who you think this book club will be a great fit for, spread the word.
Yeah.
Let's mobilize the Literally Wasted Army. Let's get out there and let's try to see how big we can get. Because
The more the merrier.
There's a lot of book lovers out there, a lot of sci-fi, fantasy folks out there.
Geeks.
Let's bring them in. Let's indoctrinate them. Let's assimilate them.
Let's
What
make
are
a
some
book
other vile
army.
words I
Okay,
can
look,
use to
cutis.
describe that?
Oh. For real, share it. Let's get a whole bunch of people up in here. It's a party, man. It's
Yeah,
always
we
more
had
fun with more people.
2,000 people on the
Yeah.
main Facebook page. So what? 2,000 people.
That's all thanks to y'all.
Yeah.
And we hope you stick with us for the next discussion. I know that some of y'all aren't a big fan of Eyes of the Dragon. Stick with us. See if our opinions change. If the book has a firework ending, or if it just fizzles out. I guess we'll find out. I've read it before, but I don't remember anything about
Yeah, I don't remember.
How many books is this now? 8?
What?
That we've started?
June, July, August, September, October, November. This is book 7.
7.
So this will be book 8. I almost hit
Sweet.
myself in the face with it.
Dan Lafferty says, "Get Expanse on the poll one month, Adam." Oh, we're working on it. Don't
yeah.
worry about that.
Is that the one that?
Yeah.
Is that the one that you gave
Yeah,
me?
yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It's so
cool.
good.
I haven't
Got
read
a
it
good
yet,
cover.
so that's good.
It's a good book.
That's a big book.
It's long. It's like 600 pages or so.
Yeah,
That's
we
why
know
it
y'all
hasn't
can
been on a
handle
poll
it.
yet.
We'll worry about that next year. Get it? Because
Already. It's November.
we did it, you guys. We made it through another live discussion. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you back here in 2 weeks.
Bye, everybody. Have a good night.